Hey everybody, I'm Clifford Stummy, Pop Song Professor, and if you like deeper meanings in your music, you have come to the right place. In this video, I want to talk about Kendrick Lamar's new album, Damn. And hear me out on this, I don't know nearly as much about Kendrick Lamar as I feel is necessary to completely appreciate all of the intricacies and beautiful aspects of this album. I listened to a large portion of To Pimp a Butterfly. I really liked All Right and the music video for that song. And then recently I've been listening to, all the little things he's been putting out, but I particularly liked Humble, the music video for that, and the song itself. Just fantastic. Love both of those. And so now that his album's out, I want to take a little bit of a closer look into some of the intricacies of these songs. So over the course of this review, I'm going to give some of my opinions on some of these songs and give you my thoughts on like the sound of it. But I particularly have kind of looked up a brief summary of the meaning of each of these songs. I not just looked it up, like I've figured it out. I've read all of the lyrics, and I've tried to include my best idea of what Kendrick Lamar is saying in each track. Now, of course, a lot of you are going to have been listening to Kendrick Lamar for longer than I have, and I really value your thoughts, so please, if there's something you want to add to this, comment those below. Every once in a while, I'll try to like pin a really good comment that I think is going to be really helpful to other people. And feel free to read other people's comments. I think those are going to be awesome too. One last thing before we get started, don't forget to comment a Kendrick Lamar song you'd like to hear me explain in the future, like individually in its own video. I think that could be pretty fun. Alright, so the two things that struck me about this album as I was listening to it. One, it's much like a lot of rap, very stream of consciousness. So it feels like he's writing rhymes and raps and words that are just flowing from his mind effortlessly and kind of following one topic from another. This sometimes makes it difficult to say, well, this song is just about this and this song is just about this. And so sometimes, ideas and thoughts that he's thinking kind of get all jumbled together. And I think it's a really interesting experience to be listening to the music that way. And the other thing I noticed is that he seems to every once in a while speak directly to his audience, and it's kind of an audience that he cares about. To narrow it down, it seems that he's singing to the part of the black community that's suffering from poverty, or fathers being in jail or shot, or people who are just living very difficult lives. And the cool thing is that when he does speak to them, it really seems like he cares about his audience. And I can understand why he has such a huge following, because that kind of care for an audience just speaks more, I think, than any clever lyric or any sort of cool sounding song. So I'm really impressed with that as I went through these lyrics. Alright, so let's start with Blood. And it's kind of just an intro. There's not really a lot going on there. Essentially, he just tells a quick story about him being killed by a blind woman when he goes over to try to help her. I think he's just kind of introducing us to these concepts of death, and death from something that is blind and unaware of what's going on around it, perhaps. Or somebody who's not really aware of the color of his skin, which is interesting because a blind person wouldn't necessarily know that he was black. And so it could be suggesting that there's a lot more out to get the African American community than just racist people. One of my favorite songs was DNA. I thought it had a really cool rap in there. I thought he went like super fast at one point, and the music was kind of weird, but I thought that the meaning of the lyrics was pretty cool. He was talking about how his DNA, like where he came from, his family history, and just who he is in the most basic level is complicated and interesting. He's ambitious, he talks about, and there's some good and some bad mixed in there. He talks about how other people's DNA is not so great, and he seems to maybe even be satiring other rappers a little bit. And yeah, I really liked the music there. It was relaxed and kind of lilting. He references Fox News and Geraldo Rivera when he talked about Kendrick Lamar's song All Right and tried to impugn Kendrick Lamar for his reference to the quote-unquote po-po, when Kendrick Lamar was really writing the song about like how it is going to be alright, we're going to be okay. And it felt like Geraldo kind of missed the whole point. Now, I thought Element was pretty cool. It was definitely very dreamy, and it was peaceful, but it had like these tense notes pick up every once in a while. And the song is just about him kind of being true to his own element. He just raps about how he's going to be him and do his own thing. Feel was another one of my favorite songs. It just sounded really cool, and the lyrics were really solid. He talks about how the world is ending, and he kind of takes on this confessional stance where he just, explains who he is some more. And he uses the phrase feel like a lot to talk about some of the terrible things that are happening in the world. And he tells his audience, like, hey, I've been praying for you. This is one of the songs, by the way, that I thought he particularly reached out to his audience. And he says, I've been praying for you, and I've been writing these songs for you, but who's praying for me? And so it's kind of the sad, depressing look at the world around him and kind of wondering, like, who actually cares about me? Rihanna does an awesome job in Loyalty, and together she and Kendrick question their audience's actual, like, quotient of loyalty. Like, How are you loyal? How much are you loyal? And what does it take to get you to be disloyal to somebody? In Pride, he talks about how he's not going to fake being humble just because other people feel insecure, and lets us know that he's going to put other rappers down. He describes what he thinks a perfect world would look like and tells us that he doesn't trust other people. Humble is one of the most fantastic songs on this album, and it's him just telling other rappers to be humble. There may be some elements of satire in there, where he's talking about like how great he is as a way of kind of making fun of rappers who only ever talk about that. Lust is interesting because it's not just about, you know, sexual lust, though there are some elements of that, but it's about living an empty life, or living with a lust for fame or for something more than what you already don't have, and not ever being happy with where you are. Love seems to be about Kendrick Lamar's fiance, and he just basically, it's a love song, and it's actually kind of sweet. I would recommend reading the lyrics and listening to it. XXX is a really interesting one. In this one, a father comes to Kendrick and says, hey, my son's been killed. You know, I kind of like need your prayer. Like, what's your advice as, you know, maybe like a spiritual mentor to me? And Kendrick says, you know, if that was me, I would want to go kill somebody. And it's a very honest take on it. And I think it's one of those rap songs that some people might listen to and be like, oh man, he's saying like we should go and kill people for revenge. When in fact it is, again, kind of confessional, and it's Kendrick Lamar saying, this is how I feel. Maybe not necessarily this is what I do, but this would be how he would feel. And it leads him to this question of like, is America a good place to live in if, you know, there is a fear or a danger of my son being killed? Fear, I thought, was an excellent one from this album. It sounded a little bit like a slow jam, and it's kind of Kendrick Lamar talking a lot about a lot of the things that he's afraid of. He raps about death itself and some of his thoughts and feelings on it, and he also seems to rap from the perspective of an abusive parent, maybe the parent he's afraid of becoming, or the parent that he had, or something like that. God is a very positive sounding song, and it seems to be kind of about how Kendrick Lamar says that, you know, with how successful he is, he kind of feels like God at times. And it's just an interesting thought to him and something he gets a little bit deeper into in those lyrics. Duckworth is a really interesting song, and it's interesting to me too because it's the most concrete, I think, name of any track on this list. A lot of them are a little bit pseudo-mythical or kind of epic, so like Pride, Humble, Lust, Love, God, Element. A couple of them are concrete, like DNA and Blood, and one of them is just really abstract, yeah. But Duckworth, like, there's no other track on this album with a name like that. And essentially, Duckworth is the last name of Kendrick Lamar's dad. In this song, he explains to us that it's not about me versus the world, it's like me versus me. I have to tame myself before I can succeed in the world. And he tells this kind of heartwarming story about how his dad and his label manager met. Essentially, his dad was working at KFC, and his label owner used to go around and like rob people. And so Kendrick Lamar's dad would give him free Kentucky Fried Chicken, and it kind of got them on like a good sides together, and eventually Kendrick Lamar, you know, was there, and he got signed to this guy's label that he started when Kendrick was 15. So it kind of worked out, and Kendrick Lamar talks about how like that's sort of like spreading good karma, giving people something for free, and how it can, you know, save a life and build a friendship. So that's essentially the deeper meaning of the tracks on this album. I have to say that my favorite songs were DNA, Feel, Humble, Fear, and maybe Duckworth. In fact, maybe even XXX. And, you know, as I listen more, maybe I'll change my mind and like others more or less or something like that. But that's kind of where I'm at right now, and I'd love to hear where you guys are at. Overall, I thought this album was very strong. I thought there was a lot of interesting points being made here. I haven't listened fully to Pimp a Butterfly, so I can't necessarily compare it to that. I don't think that there's any song on here with the complete strength of All Right. I feel like that was a better song than a lot of these are, but that's not to say that these aren't like really good songs. I have enjoyed listening to these, and I'm excited to continue listening to them. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say though. Which songs are your favorite? Which songs did you not care for? Which songs spoke to you and how? I think that's probably the most important question when it comes to music, art of any sort. So I'd love to hear what you guys think. Love to hear what you have to say. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. And don't forget to comment a Kendrick Lamar song you'd like me to explain in the future. Check out some of these other videos that I'm posting all around here. And I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching.